The Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, is a proposed amendment to the United States Constitution designed to guarantee equal rights for all citizens regardless of sex. It seeks to end the legal distinctions between men and women in terms of divorce, property, employment, and other matters. The ERA was originally written by Alice Paul and Crystal Eastman. The amendment was introduced in Congress for the first time in 1921 and has prompted conversations about the meaning of equality for women and men. In its early history, middle-class women were largely supportive, while those speaking for the working class were often opposed, arguing that employed women needed special protections regarding working conditions and employment hours. With the rise of the women's movement in the United States in the 1960s, the ERA garnered increasing support, and, after being reintroduced by Representative Martha Griffiths, D.M., in 1971, it passed both houses of Congress in 1972 and was submitted to the state legislatures for ratification. Congress had originally set a ratification deadline of March 22, 1979. Through 1977, the amendment received 35 of the necessary 38 state ratifications. With wide, bipartisan support, including that of both major political parties, both houses of Congress, and Presidents Ford and Carter, it seemed headed for ratification until Phyllis Schlafly mobilized conservative women in opposition, arguing that the ERA would disadvantage housewives and cause women to be drafted into the military. 4 states rescinded their ratifications before the 1979 deadline. However, there is no precedent or mechanism within the U.S. Constitution for rescinding, and, thus, it becomes a legal question. In 1978, a joint resolution of Congress extended the ratification deadline to June 30, 1982, but no further states ratified the amendment before that revised deadline. On March 22, 2017, the 45th anniversary of Congress's submission of the amendment to the states, the Nevada legislature was the first to ratify the ERA after the expiration of the original deadline. Text. Section 1. Equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of sex. Section 2. The Congress shall have the power to enforce, by appropriate legislation, the provisions of this article. Section 3. This amendment shall take effect 2 years after the date of ratification. Background. On September 25, 1921, the National Woman's Party announced plans to campaign for an amendment to the U.S. Constitution to guarantee women equal rights with men. The text of the proposed amendment read: Section 1. No political, civil, or legal disabilities or inequalities on account of sex or on account of marriage, unless applying equally to both sexes, shall exist within the United States or any territory subject to the jurisdiction thereof. Section 2. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Alice Paul, the head of the National Women's Party, believed that the 19th Amendment would not be enough to ensure that men and women were treated equally regardless of sex. In 1923, she revised the proposed amendment to read: Men and women shall have equal rights throughout the United States and every place subject to its jurisdiction. Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. Paul named this version the Lucretia Mott Amendment, after a female abolitionist who fought for women's rights and attended the first Women's Rights Convention. In 1943, Alice Paul further revised the amendment to reflect the wording of the 15th and 19th Amendments. This text became Section 1 of the version passed by Congress in 1972. As a result, in the 1940s, ERA opponents proposed an alternative, which provided that no distinctions on the basis of sex shall be made except such as are reasonably justified by differences in physical structure, biological differences, or social function. It was quickly turned down by both pro- and anti-ERA coalitions. Feminists split. Since the 1920s, the Equal Rights Amendment has caused a sharp debate among feminists about the meaning of women's equality. It was feminist against feminist, said historian Judith Sealander. Alice Paul and her National Woman's Party was the leading proponent, arguing that women should be on equal terms with men in all regards, even if that means sacrificing certain benefits given to women through protective legislation, such as shorter work hours and no night work or heavy lifting. Opponents of the amendment, such as the Women's Joint Congressional Committee, believed that these gender-based benefits protected women and that the loss of such protection would not be worth the supposed gain in equality. In general, middle-class elements supported the ERA, and working-class elements, and the labor movement, opposed it. In 1924, the Forum hosted a debate between Dora Stevens and Alice Hamilton concerning these two perspectives on the proposed amendment. Their debate reflected the wider tension in the developing feminist movement of the early 20th century between two approaches towards the equality of gender. One approach emphasized shared similarities between the sexes and demanded rights based on women's humanity. The other approach emphasized women's unique experiences and how they were different from men to obtain recognition for their specific needs. The crusade against the ERA on behalf of working-class women was led by Mary Anderson and the Women's Bureau beginning in 1923. These feminists argued that legislation including mandated minimum wages, safety regulations, restricted daily and weekly hours, lunch breaks, and maternity provisions would be more beneficial to the majority of women who were forced to work out of economic necessity, not personal fulfillment. The debate over the ERA also drew from struggles between working-class and professional women. Alice Hamilton said, in her speech Protection for Women Workers, that the ERA would strip working women of the small protections they had achieved, and leave them powerless to further improve their condition in the future, or attain necessary protections in the present. The National Woman's Party already had tested its approach in Wisconsin, where it won passage of the Wisconsin Equal Rights Law in 1921. It then took the ERA to Congress, where Senator Charles Curtis, a future vice president, introduced it for the first time in October 1921. Though the ERA was introduced in every congressional session between 1921 and 1972, it almost never reached the floor of either the Senate or the House for a vote. Instead, it was usually blocked in committee, except in 1946, when it was defeated in the Senate by a vote of 38 to 35, not receiving the required two-thirds vote. Hayden Rider and protective labor legislation. In 1950 and 1953, the ERA was passed by the Senate with a provision known as the Hayden Rider, introduced by Arizona Senator Carl Hayden. The Hayden Rider added a sentence to the ERA to keep special protections for women. The provisions of this article shall not be construed to impair any rights, benefits, or exemptions now or hereafter conferred by law upon persons of the female sex. By allowing women to keep their existing and future special protections, it was expected that the ERA would be more appealing to its opponents. Though opponents were marginally more in favor of the ERA with the Hayden Rider, supporters of the original ERA believed it negated the amendment's original purpose, causing the amendment not to be passed in the House. ERA supporters were hopeful that the second term of Dwight Eisenhower would advance their agenda. Eisenhower had publicly promised to assure women everywhere in our land equality of rights, and in 1958, President Dwight Eisenhower asked a joint session of Congress to pass the Equal Rights Amendment, the first president to show such a level of support for the amendment. However, the National Woman's Party found the amendment to be unacceptable and asked it to be withdrawn whenever the Hayden Rider was added to the ERA. The Republican Party included support of the ERA in its platform beginning in 1940, renewing the plank every 4 years until 1980. The ERA was strongly opposed by the American Federation of Labor and other labor unions, who feared the amendment would invalidate protective labor legislation for women. The Equal Rights Amendment was also opposed by Eleanor Roosevelt and most New Dealers. They felt that ERA was designed for middle-class women but that working-class women needed government protection. They also feared that the ERA would undercut the male-dominated labor unions that were a core component of the New Deal coalition. Most Northern Democrats, who aligned themselves with the anti-ERA labor unions, opposed the amendment. The ERA was supported by Southern Democrats and almost all Republicans. At the 1944 Democratic National Convention, the Democrats made the divisive step of including the ERA in their platform, but the Democratic Party did not become united in favor of the amendment until congressional passage in 1972. The main support base for the era until the late 1960s was among middle-class Republican women. The League of Women Voters, formerly the National American Woman Suffrage Association, opposed the Equal Rights Amendment until 1972, fearing the loss of protective labor legislation. 1960s. At the Democratic National Convention in 1960, a proposal to endorse the ERA was rejected after it met explicit opposition from liberal groups including the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU, the AFL-CIO, labor unions such as the American Federation of Teachers, Americans for Democratic Action, ADA, the American Nurses Association, the Women's Division of the Methodist Church, and the National Councils of Jewish, Catholic, and Negro Women. The losing side then demanded that presidential candidate John F. Kennedy announce his support of the ERA. He did so in an October 21, 1960, letter to the chairman of the National Woman's Party. When Kennedy was elected, he made Esther Peterson the highest-ranking woman in his administration as an Assistant Secretary of Labor. Peterson publicly opposed the Equal Rights Amendment based on her belief that it would weaken protective labor legislation. Peterson referred to the National Woman's Party members, most of them veteran suffragists, and preferred the specific bills for specific ills approach to equal rights. Ultimately, Kennedy's ties to labor unions meant he and his administration did not support the ERA. As a concession to feminists, Kennedy appointed a Blue Ribbon Commission on Women, the President's Commission on the Status of Women, to investigate the problem of sex discrimination in the United States. The commission was chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, who opposed the ERA but no longer spoke against it. In the early 1960s, Roosevelt announced that, due to unionization, she believed the ERA was no longer a threat to women as it once may have been, and told supporters that they could have the amendment if they wanted it. However, she never endorsed the ERA. The commission she chaired reported, after her death, that no ERA was needed. The commission helped win passage of the Equal Pay Act of 1963, which banned sex discrimination in wages in a number of professions. It would later be amended in the early 1970s to include the professions it initially excluded, and secured an executive order from Kennedy eliminating sex discrimination in the civil service. The commission, made largely of anti-ERA feminists with ties to labor, proposed remedies to the widespread sex discrimination it unearthed, and in its 1963 final report held that on the issue of equality a constitutional amendment need not now be sought. The commission established state and local commissions on the status of women and arranged for follow-up conferences in the years to come. The following year, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 banned workplace discrimination not only on the basis of race, religion, and national origin, but also on the basis of sex, thanks to the lobbying of Alice Paul and Coretta Scott King and the skillful politicking of Representative Martha Griffiths of Michigan. A new women's movement gained ground in the later 1960s as a result of a variety of factors: Betty Friedan's bestseller The Feminine Mystique, the network of women's rights commissions formed by Kennedy's National Commission, the frustration over women's social and economic status, and anger over the lack of government and Equal Employment Opportunity Commission enforcement of the Equal Pay Act and Title VII of the Civil Rights Act. In June 1966, at the Third National Conference on the Status of Women in Washington, D.C., Betty Friedan and a group of activists frustrated with the lack of government action in enforcing Title VII of the Civil Rights Act formed the National Organization for Women to act as an NAACP for women, demanding full equality for American women and men. In 1967, at the urging of Alice Paul, now endorsed the Equal Rights Amendment. The decision caused some Union Democrats and social conservatives to leave the organization and form the Women's Equity Action League. Within a few years will also endorse the ERA, but the move to support the amendment benefited NOW, bolstering its membership. By the late 1960s NOW had made significant political and legislative victories and was gaining enough power to become a major lobbying force. In 1969, newly elected Representative Shirley Chisholm of New York gave her famous speech Equal Rights for Women on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. Congressional passage. In February 1970, now picketed the United States Senate, a subcommittee of which was holding hearings on a constitutional amendment to lower the voting age to 18. Now disrupted the hearings and demanded a hearing on the Equal Rights Amendment and won a meeting with senators to discuss the era. That August, over 20,000 American women held a nationwide women's strike for equality protest to demand full social, economic, and political equality. Said Friedan of the strike, all kinds of women's groups all over the country will be using this week on August 26 particularly, to point out those areas in women's life which are still not addressed. For example, a question of equality before the law, we are interested in the Equal Rights Amendment. Despite being centered in New York City, which was regarded as one of the biggest strongholds for NOW and other groups sympathetic to the women's liberation movement such as Red Stockings, and having a small number of participants in contrast to the large-scale anti-war and civil rights protests that had occurred in the recent time prior to the event, the strike was credited as one of the biggest turning points in the rise of second-wave feminism. In Washington, D.C., protesters presented a sympathetic Senate leadership with a petition for the Equal Rights Amendment at the U.S. Capitol. Influential news sources such as Time also supported the cause of the protesters. Soon after the strike took place, activists distributed literature across the country as well. In 1970, congressional hearings began on the era. On August 10, 1970, Michigan Democrat Martha Griffith successfully brought Alice Paul's era to the House floor, after 15 years of bringing the bill to the House Judiciary Committee without success. The bill passed in the House and continued on to the Senate, which voted for the era with an added clause that women would be exempt from the military. The session of Congress ended before the bill could go any further. Griffiths reintroduced the era, and achieved success on Capitol Hill with her House Joint Resolution No. 208, which was adopted by the House on October 12, 1971, with a vote of 354 yeas, for, 24 nays, against, and 51 not voting. Griffiths's joint resolution was then adopted by the Senate on March 22, 1972, with a vote of 84 yeas, 8 nays, and 7 not voting. The Senate version, drafted by Senator Birch Bayh of Indiana, passed after the defeat of an amendment proposed by Senator Sam Ervin of North Carolina that would have exempted women from the draft. President Richard Nixon immediately endorsed the era's approval upon its passage by the 92nd Congress. Contemporary movement on the era began in 2013, when Senators Ben Cardin of Maryland and Mark Kirk of Illinois, along with Congresswoman Jackie Speier of California, introduced identical bills in both the U.S. Senate and House chambers to remove the ratification deadline altogether. Currently, the legislation continues to gain co-sponsors in both chambers in anticipation of completion of the amendment. Actions in the state legislatures. Ratifications. In 1972, the era was sent to the states, with a 7-year deadline to get 38 states to ratify the amendment. Most states were eager to pass the legislation. In 1972, 22 states ratified the amendment and 8 more joined in 1973. Between 1974 and 1977, only 5 states approved the era, and advocates became worried about the approaching March 22, 1979 deadline. At the same time, the legislatures of 4 states which had ratified the era then adopted legislation purporting to rescind those ratifications. If, indeed, a state legislature has power to rescind, then the era actually had ratifications by only 31 states, not 35, when March 22, 1979 arrived. The era has been ratified by the following states: Hawaii, March 22, 1972. New Hampshire, March 23, 1972. Delaware, March 23, 1972. Iowa, March 24, 1972. Idaho, March 24, 1972. Kansas, March 28, 1972. Nebraska, March 29, 1972. Texas, March 30, 1972. Tennessee, April 4, 1972. Alaska, April 5, 1972. Rhode Island, April 14, 1972. New Jersey, April 17, 1972. Colorado, April 21, 1972. West Virginia, April 22, 1972. Wisconsin, April 26, 1972. New York, May 18, 1972. Michigan, May 22, 1972. Maryland, May 26, 1972. Massachusetts, June 21, 1972. Kentucky, June 26, 1972. Pennsylvania, September 27, 1972. California, November 13, 1972. Wyoming, January 26, 1973. South Dakota, February 5, 1973. Oregon, February 8, 1973. Minnesota, February 8, 1973. New Mexico, February 28, 1973. Vermont, March 1, 1973. Connecticut, March 15, 1973. Washington, March 22, 1973. Maine, January 18, 1974. Montana, January 25, 1974. Ohio, February 7, 1974. North Dakota, March 19, 1975. Indiana, January 18, 1977. Nevada, March 22, 2017, despite the ratification deadline expiring decades earlier. Ratifications rescinded. Legislators in the following states voted to rescind their earlier ratification of the ERA. Nebraska, March 15, 1973, Legislative Resolution No. 9. Tennessee, April 23, 1974, House Joint Resolution No. 371 and Senate Joint Resolution No. 29. Idaho, February 8, 1977, Senate Joint Resolution No. 133 and House Concurrent Resolution No. 10. Kentucky, March 17, 1978, House, Joint, Resolution No. 2 and House, Joint, Resolution No. 20. The Lieutenant Governor of Kentucky, Thelma Stovall, who was acting as governor in the governor's absence, vetoed the rescinding resolution. The Constitution is silent regarding whether the governor of a state has any authority regarding whether that state ratifies an amendment to the Constitution. The Constitution is likewise silent regarding a state's authority to rescind its ratification of a proposed, but not yet adopted, constitutional amendment. Refusal to recognize deadline extension to June 30, 1982. On March 1, 1979, the South Dakota legislature approved Senate Joint Resolution No. 2 which, while not going quite so far as to rescind South Dakota's 1973 ratification of ERA, stipulated that the ERA's opportunity for ratification by any state of the Union would expire on March 22, 1979. Furthermore, Senate Joint Resolution No. 2 made clear that South Dakota's own ratification of the ERA would no longer be valid after March 22, 1979, and that any ratification of the ERA after that date in any other state would be considered by South Dakota to be null and void. Non-ratifying states with one House approval. At various times, in 8 of the 14 non-ratifying states, one House of the legislature approved the ERA. It failed in those states because both houses of a state's legislature must approve during the same session for that state to ratify. Florida, whose House of Representatives voted to ratify the ERA on March 24, 1972, with a tally of 91-4, a second time on April 10, 1975, with a tally of 62-58, a third time on May 17, 1979, with a tally of 66-53, and a fourth time on June 21, 1982, with a tally of 60 to 58. Illinois, whose Senate voted to ratify the ERA in May 1972 with a tally of 30 to 21, and again on May 22, 2014, Senate Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment No. 75, with a tally of 39 to 11, and whose House of Representatives voted to ratify the ERA on May 1, 1975 with a tally of 113 to 62, and again on May 21, 2003 with a tally of 76 to 41, House Joint Resolution Constitutional Amendment No. 1. At various times, votes were conducted in both houses of the Illinois General Assembly on the question of ratifying the ERA, and while most members voted in favor of ratification, the result was always less than the 3/5 supermajority vote in each house of the Illinois General Assembly for ratification as required by the internal parliamentary rules of both the Illinois Senate and the Illinois House of Representatives. A provision of the Illinois State Constitution, which had required a supermajority of 3/5 in both legislative chambers, was found to be unconstitutional by the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois in the 1975 case of Dyer v. Blair. Since then, the ERA has been voted on multiple times, but has only ever passed in one of the chambers. The most recent vote in favor of the ERA was in the state Senate in May 2014 with a tally of 39 to 11, and 6 voting present. Louisiana, whose Senate voted to ratify the ERA on June 7, 1972, with a tally of 25 to 13. Missouri, whose House of Representatives voted to ratify the ERA on February 7, 1975, with a tally of 82 to 75. North Carolina, whose House of Representatives voted to ratify the ERA on February 9, 1977, with a tally of 61 to 55. Oklahoma, whose Senate voted to ratify the ERA on March 23, 1972, by a voice vote. South Carolina, whose House of Representatives voted to ratify the ERA on March 22, 1972, with a tally of 83 to 0. Virginia, whose Senate voted to ratify the ERA on February 7, 2011, with a tally of 24 to 16, Senate Joint Resolution No. 357, a second time on February 14, 2012, with a tally of 24 to 15, Senate Joint Resolution No. 130, a third time on February 5, 2014, with a tally of 25 to 8, Senate Joint Resolution No. 78, a fourth time on February 5, 2015, with a tally of 20 to 19, Senate Joint Resolution No. 216, and a fifth time on January 26, 2016, with a tally of 21 to 19, Senate Joint Resolution No. 1. Over the past 20 years, ratification resolutions have also been defeated in Arizona, Arkansas, and Mississippi. Congressional extension of ratification deadline. In 1978, as the 1979 deadline approached, the 95th Congress adopted House Joint Resolution No. 638, HJRES 638, by Representative Elizabeth Holtzman of New York, which purported to extend the ERA's ratification deadline to June 30, 1982. HJRES 638 received less than two-thirds of the vote, a simple majority, not a supermajority, in both the House of Representatives and the Senate. For that reason, ERA supporters deemed it necessary that HJRES 638 be transmitted to then-President Jimmy Carter for signature as a safety precaution. Carter signed the joint resolution, though he questioned on procedural grounds the propriety of his doing so. During this disputed extension, no additional states ratified or rescinded. No additional states ratified the ERA during that extra period of slightly more than 3 years. On June 18, 1980, a resolution in the Illinois House of Representatives resulted in a vote of 102 to 71 in favor, but Illinois required a 3/5 majority on constitutional amendments, and so the measure failed by 5 votes. In 1982, 7 female ERA supporters went on a fast and 17 chained themselves to the door of the Illinois Senate chamber. None of this resulted in any state ratifications. The closest the ERA came to gaining an additional ratification between the original deadline of March 22, 1979 and the revised June 30, 1982, expiration date was when it was approved by the Florida House of Representatives on June 21, 1982. In the final week before the deadline, that ratifying resolution was defeated in the Florida Senate by a vote of 16 yeas and 22 nays. Even if Florida had ratified the ERA, the proposed amendment would still have been 2 states short of the required 38, 7 states short if the rescissions were valid. According to research by Professor Jules P. Girard, professor of law at Washington University in St. Louis, of the 35 legislatures that passed ratification resolutions, 24 explicitly referred to the 1979 deadline. In the courts. On December 23, 1981, in Idaho v. Freeman, the United States District Court for the District of Idaho ruled that the rescissions, all of which occurred before the original 1979 ratification deadline, were valid and that the ERA's deadline extension was unconstitutional. The National Organization for Women appealed both rulings. On October 4, 1982, in Now v. Idaho, 459 U.S. 809, 1982, the U.S. Supreme Court vacated the ruling in Idaho v. Freeman and declared the entire matter moot on the grounds that the ERA was dead for the reason given by the Administrator of General Services that the ERA had not received the required number of ratifications, 38, so that the amendment has failed of adoption no matter what the resolution of the legal issues presented here. Support for the ERA. Supporters of the ERA point to the lack of a specific guarantee in the Constitution for equal rights protections on the basis of sex. In 1973, future Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg summarized a supporting argument for the ERA in the American Bar Association Journal. The Equal Rights Amendment, in sum, would dedicate the nation to a new view of the rights and responsibilities of men and women. It firmly rejects sharp legislative lines between the sexes as constitutionally tolerable. Instead, it looks toward a legal system in which each person will be judged on the basis of individual merit and not on the basis of an unalterable trait of birth that bears no necessary relationship to need or ability. In the early 1940s, both the Democratic and Republican parties added support for the ERA to their platforms. The National Organization for Women, NOW, and ER America, a coalition of almost 80 organizations, led the pro-ERA efforts. Between 1972 and 1982, ERA supporters held rallies, petitioned, picketed, went on hunger strikes, and performed acts of civil disobedience. On July 9, 1978, NOW and other organizations hosted a national march in Washington, D.C., which garnered over 100,000 supporters, and was followed by a lobby day on July 10. On June 6, 1982, NOW sponsored marches in states that had not passed the ERA, including Florida, Illinois, North Carolina, and Oklahoma. Key feminists of the time, such as Gloria Steinem, spoke out in favor of the ERA, arguing that ERA opposition was based on gender myths that overemphasized difference and ignored evidence of unequal treatment between men and women. Black women and the ERA. Many black women supported the ERA since they felt impacted by both race and sex discrimination. One prominent black female supporter was Black Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. On August 10, 1970, she gave a speech on the ERA called for the Equal Rights Amendment in Washington, D.C. In her speech, she talked about how widespread sex discrimination had become and how the ERA would address that. She also said that laws to protect women in the workforce from unsafe working conditions would also be needed by men, and thus the ERA would help all people. Other black women at the time supported the ERA for similar reasons. By 1976, 60% of black women and 63% of black men were in favor of the ERA, and the legislation was supported by black organizations such as the NAACP, National Council of Negro Women, Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, National Association of Negro Business, and the National Black Feminist Organization. Opposition to the era. Opponents of the era focused on traditional gender roles, such as how men do the fighting in wartime. They argued that the amendment would eliminate the men-only draft requirement and guarantee the possibility that women would be subject to conscription and be required to have military combat roles in future wars if it were passed. Defense of traditional gender roles proved to be a useful tactic. In Illinois, supporters of Phyllis Schlafly, a conservative Republican activist from Illinois, used traditional symbols of the American housewife. They took homemade bread, jams, and apple pies to the state legislators, with the slogans, "Preserve us from a congressional jam, vote against the era sham, and I am for mom and apple pie." They appealed to married women by stressing that the amendment would repeal protective laws such as alimony and eliminate the tendency for mothers to obtain custody over their children in divorce cases. It was suggested that single-sex bathrooms would be eliminated and same-sex couples would be able to get married if the amendment were passed. Traditional women start.
Please subscribe and thanks for watching.